Hey y'all, I'm Laura. Today we're making a pair of Hematine Ladder Earrings. I'm so excited for this demo for you guys. We have Hematine today, and Hematine is one of my favorite gemstones, and we have a ton of it at JTV. We have got a ton of big sets of Hematine, so you get a lot of bang for your buck, and you get lots of cool colors and shapes. Tons of variety. I think there's a set that has stars in it, Hematine stars, which is so cool. Today we are using these grooved rectangle beads, and as soon as I saw them, I thought I need to make ladder earrings with them. So that's what we're doing today. Hematine is really great. It's got tons of color, flash. It really pops, really catches your eye, and on a pair of earrings, that's what you want. So let's talk about the materials and tools that we're going to need today for these earrings. First is our Hematine beads. These are the grooved Hematine beads in the antique gold color. Tons of colors in this set. I brought a couple of different strands with me today that come in this set. Look at all those cool colors. There's a tons of variety, so you can make these earrings over and over and over again in all different colors. We're gonna need an ear wire. Any ear wire that matches the metal tone that you choose or whatever you think looks good with your Hematine. Any style ear wire too. It doesn't have to be a French hook. You can do a post. You can do some lever backs, anything that is comfortable for you. And then to build our ladder earring, we're going to be using 28 gauge wire. I am using this pear wire, 28 gauge gold wire. Pear wire is one of the best craft wires there is, and we have tons of it. We love pear wire here at JTV. It is one of the most high quality craft wires that I've ever worked with. I don't even think it should be called a craft wire, to be honest, because it is so nice, and you can't even tell the difference between this wire and a 28 gauge gold filled wire. For our tools, we're going to be using our trifecta, which is your most foundational jewelry making tools. That is our chain nose plier, our round nose plier, our flush cutter, and then we have our nylon jawed pliers, one of my favorite tools of all time. And I use this to straighten out my wire. It really is great for pulling any kinks or weird bends out of your wire. It straightens your wire really nicely without breaking it, and you can really extend the life of your wire and save some wire without having to scrap a bunch of it. Well, let's get started. I'm gonna cut about 3 feet of 28 gauge wire. How much wire you need is going to depend on how long you want your ladder earrings to be. The longer you want them to be, the longer piece of wire you're going to need to cut. And I like to get this nice and straightened out before I cut it off the spool, because I can hold on to my spool and really pull tight with my pliers. See, I made a little kink, and now I'm going to straighten it out with my pliers. So I'll show you these in action. So I untwisted that kink, and then I'm gonna just pull that and get that smoothed out. So I don't have to cut that piece off. I can save it with my pliers. Now we're gonna go back and just give it one more tug. And one other thing that nylon jawed pliers do is it helps to work harden your wire as you're pulling, which is a really important thing in making jewelry. And especially if we're using a wire as thin as our 28 gauge wire, if we can harden it a little bit while we're working, that's going to help us in the long run. All right, so I've got my 3 feet of 28 gauge wire here. And for this pair of earrings, I'm going to use 15 of these Hematine beads. Like I said, you can use as many or as few as you want, depending on the length of the earring that you want. So I'm going to string my first Hematine on here, and I'm going to drop it down into the middle of this wire. So I want it to land right in the middle. And then we're just going to pull this up really tight, kind of on the edge of that rectangle bead here. And then we're going to come back up here to the top of our wire, grab our next bead. We're going to feed one piece of wire through one end of our bead, and then we're going to feed our other piece of wire through the other end. There we go. So you've got them kind of crisscrossing there through the bead. And then we're just going to gently pull these 2 wires through that bead and pull this down onto that our starter bead down there at the bottom. You want to go slowly with this because its tendency is to kind of twist up, and if you do it real fast, you could twist this up crooked or with a kink in your wire, and that's really hard to kind of get undone once you do it. So just tighten this until our second rectangle is sitting snug down onto our first rectangle, and just pull these wires nice and tight. And I like to bring them up around my bead like that. And then we're going to string our next hematine. So same thing, we're going to go one end through one side of the bead and one end through the other side of the bead. And we're just going to slowly pull this. I like to try to pull kind of at the same pace for both wires and kind of pull them evenly with each other so that I don't get like one side pulled way tight and then I've got a ton of wire to pull for the other side. It kind of makes it a little bit more difficult. So if you can kind of shimmy your bead down and pull your wires through at the same pace, that's going to help with avoiding any kinks or any weird tangles in your project. Okay, so again, if you pull it across your bead and then bring it back, then you've got like a nice bend going. And that's going to help your wire sit really flush up against your hematine bead so that you don't have like wire sticking out along the sides of your hematine. And that's something that we want to avoid, because that's a great place for something to get caught in your earring and pull on your earring and potentially break your 28 gauge wire. Because this is such a fine gauge of wire, we really want it tucked as tightly as we can get and pulled as tightly as we can get it. So again, back up to the top of our wire here, and we're feeding one wire through one end and one through the other, and then pulling at the same pace, trying to keep it even here as we go. There we go. And again, giving this some good tugs, getting it nice and tight, and then we're going to pull it across and bring it back, pull it across and bring it back. And then we're just going to continue doing this until we get 15 of these hematines strung. Okay, so I've got all 15 of my hematine strung in my ladder style here. And now we are going to just kind of tighten this up again a little bit and make sure that we like the shape and the proportion. And one thing that I like to do with my nylon jawed pliers is go in, I'm gonna hold this kind of upright, and I like to squeeze the ends of my beads with my nylon jawed plier, and that helps to just push that 28 gauge wire really nice and tight up against your bead, so that if you do have any wire that's kind of protruding out, this is going to close that up, and then you're going to have a really seamless look, you know, from the front of your earring. So now we have got our edges tucked in, and we are ready to make our loop at the top of our earring. So we are going to bring both of our wires together up here at the top, and then I'm going to grab one of my wires in here in the middle. I'm going to bend my wire up, and then I'm going to grab the other piece of wire, and at the same point bend that up. So now they're pointing up like this. And then we're just going to give that a little twist not too much. I don't want to twist too tight because I don't want to break my 28 gauge wire. And one thing that is really important with these earrings is that you make sure where you have twisted those wires together up at the top is as perfectly in the middle of these hematines as you can get it. You want your loop to be centered on the top of your earring so that your earring hangs straight down and it doesn't turn at an angle. If your loop is off center, it's going to make your whole earring kind of hang crooked. So making sure that that is pulled nice and tight into the center is going to help the overall finished look of your earring. So now that we've got these wires twisted together, we are ready to make our loop up at the top. And I am going to use both pieces of wire to make my loop. 28 gauge is a really fine wire, so I want to give myself a little extra security, so I'm going to use both wires to make that loop. That way, if there's a breakdown with one piece of wire, I've still got the other one that's holding the earring onto the ear wire. So we are going to grab right at the top of our hematine here with our round nose pliers. And we're going to make a loop, like I said, with both of our wires. We're going to come down around our pliers. And then we can finish off our loop by just wrapping these two wires down towards our hematine. I want to get a good amount of wraps on here because this is going to help me with security as well. So getting that nice and tight, and then just going to straighten this guy up while we're wrapping. Okay, so now I am ready to cut my tails off. And then with our chain nose pliers, we will just tuck these tails in so that we don't have any pieces sticking out. And then I like to go back with my round nose plier and go back through that loop and just kind of round that back out again and align both of those pieces of wire together. Like this. So you've got a good nice round loop on top of your earring. And now we're ready to put our ear wire on. So I will grab my ear wire and then we will open this loop up at the bottom of our ear wire with our chain nose pliers, just slightly. And then we're going to drop this guy down onto our ear wire. And then again with our chain nose pliers, close that up. And okay, so you see how right now the earring is turned the wrong direction. So it's kind of parallel to the ear wire. I want to turn it so that it's perpendicular to the ear wire so that when you're wearing the earring, they're looking at that full ladder section and not the side of it. So I'm just going to go up here with my chain nose pliers and grab that loop that I made, and I'm just going to turn it 90 degrees so that now my loop is parallel with my earring, and that makes my whole ladder section sit correctly on the ear wire. And that is it for our ladder style Hematine earrings. Let's go back over the tools and supplies that we needed to make these earrings. We used our Hematine grooved rectangle beads, 28 gauge wire, chain nose pliers, round nose pliers, flush cutters, and our nylon jawed pliers. I want to know how else you would use Hematine to add some flash to your jewelry. Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks for joining me today, guys. I'll see you next time.